Coming up on the Paper Talk today, we're looking at the future of Erik Ten Hag. It seems as though INEOS are happy to keep him, but are they all on the same page? There's been reports that maybe not everyone was keen on keeping the Manchester United manager, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe wanted a forensic analysis of different options as well. So we'll be getting into that. Plus, we'll have a little bit of an injury update. We had an injury update yesterday. Well, we've got an update on top of that one. Also as well, isn't it nice that Manchester United are not being blamed for an England defeat? Let's get into it. Jay here, Stretford, Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford and the weather is quite cold. Loads of Manchester United news to crack on with, so we will do that. But make sure before we do, you are hitting like, share and subscribe. Let's get to 800,000 subscribers by, I don't know, by the end of the year. With your support, we'll get there. Now, you may have seen, I'm sure you have, there's a few injury stories that we'll get into. But first of all, let's just talk about INEOS, Erik Ten Hag, this meeting they've had. There's been more developments or more announcements or more stories or more reports, however you want to term it, this morning. Sky and a few other papers and news outlets reporting that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, when it came to this meeting that INEOS had, wanted a sort of forensic analysis of all the options on the table and all the cases on the table when it came to Erik Ten Hag and his future. Now, it seems like, after all this analysis, that they have decided to stick with Erik Ten Hag. But also, I think it's Gimme Sport that are reporting that it wasn't a completely unanimous decision. There was dissenting voices. They couldn't come to an agreement. That some voices or some people in the room were like not too sure on keeping him. Others wanted to keep him. This doesn't bode well for either Manchester United or Erik Ten Hag. If you've got the ownership or the hierarchy not in agreement, not 100% behind you, then I don't see how that is conducive to a successful relationship, a successful working relationship. I'll be honest with you. Now, I've had my doubts about Erik Ten Hag over the last few weeks. I've always backed him, and I've been beginning to look at some of these results, some of the football we've seen, and I'm losing a little bit of faith, I'll be honest with you. And I don't like saying that as a Manchester United fan, because my default saying is to back this manager. But as long as he is the manager of Manchester United, I will get behind him, I'll get behind the team. Yes, I will criticise and call out mistakes or whatever that I see. We're not MUTV, we'll always do that, and I'll always do that as both a fan and as a presenter on this channel. But you will back him, you'll get behind him in terms of, like, let's, get in here and against Brentford and cheering the team on or what have you. However, I do worry that if you've got people who are saying, we're not too keen on him, who are basically his bosses, and others say, no, we need to stick with him. I don't know how that works. I mentioned the other day about the fact that you've got Ruud van Nistelrooy seemingly waiting in the wings as well. I don't think that's the best working relationship if he's sort of being viewed as a potential successor to the manager. I'm sure they'll all be very professional and they'll still carry on working, and I certainly don't put any weight whatsoever in that footage we saw of them two discussing something at the Aston Villa game, which everyone seems to think was them rowing or whatever. I don't think you could tell anything from that. If I'm being honest, I'm just a little bit concerned about what is going on in terms of the managerial structure and the people above him at Manchester United at the minute. Are they all singing from the same song sheet? And if not, is that going to be harmful to the future prospects of Manchester United? Get involved in the comments, get involved in the chat, and let me know what you think. At the minute, it does seem as though Erik Ten Hag's job is safe, but if you've got some people who are 100% behind him, and also if you've got this sort of attitude of, well, let's see what happens, let's see how he progresses, let's see what the future entails, and you've got some games coming up that on paper are winnable and he doesn't win them, then where does that leave us? Does that leave us reviewing it again after the Brentford game, or maybe after the Fenerbahce game or the Leicester game? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, but at the minute it does seem as though his job's safe. However, not everyone is completely behind him, so it is what it is, as they say, isn't it? We had an injury update yesterday. I covered this in my news in the morning, and this was about Mazraoui. This story sort of broke on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it nowadays, about the fact that he had a heart issue or cardio issue. Now, at the time, there wasn't anyone credible posting or tweeting about this. It just seemed there was a couple of United accounts that had about 10,000 followers who sort of broke the story. I'm not saying you have to have a certain amount of followers to break a story. Obviously, anyone can. But I looked at it and I was like, until we get it stood up, I don't want to go too heavy on it because we don't know, and it might just be a load of nonsense. However, it turned out to be true. It seems he does have a little bit of an issue there. It's not too serious. I think it's been dealt with. He's just going to be out for a few weeks. It's just a massive blow, really, to Erik Ten Hag and Manchester United, because yes, it's only a few weeks, but this is a player who, since he's come in, has probably been the best of the new signings. I think he's been the best player we've signed so far in terms of his performances. It's not been all sunshine and rainbows, and I think he's had a couple of games where you go, okay, he's maybe struggled a little bit, but by and large, he's been a revelation. And you look at the fullback situation at the minute, where you've got Diogo Dalot, who's having to play at left back because we haven't got a left back. You've got Mazraoui, who's been doing very well. You've got Luke Shaw and Tyrone Malacia, who are seemingly on the road to recovery and could be available, fingers crossed, sooner rather than later. But the options are sort of, they're running out. And if you lose Mazraoui, then you're looking at it, then you've got Dalot. If Malacia and the Shaw, if neither of those are fit, then what do you do then? Do you play perhaps Lisandro Martinez at left back, or Johnny Evans at left back, or Toby Collier, who played at left back, I think, against Barnsley? I know it's going to be a different proposition against Brentford. Do you do something like that? Do you bring Harry Amas into the team? Now, I like Harry Amas. I think he's a very good player. I think he's 17 years old. Is he ready to come into the first team in the Premier League? I don't know, but you might have to. It's not a great situation, is it, that Ten Hag finds himself in? Hopefully, Luke Shaw or Malacia, one of those two will be available. But even if they are available for the Brentford game, that's going to be their first game. It's going to be Tyrone Malacia's first game, if it is, in about, 14 months? Something, I've lost count. And it's going to be Luke Shaw's first game for Manchester United since, February? So, drastic times for the manager here. He's got this sort of thing this cloud hanging over his head when it comes to the sort of the hierarchy, maybe not being 100% on board with him. And he's also got this injury crisis that he's still having to deal with. I say crisis, it's not necessarily the amount of injuries we've got, it's the fact that all those injuries are concentrated on the fullback positions. Last season was a proper crisis where you had so many injuries. This season you've got fewer injuries, but we're missing basically 3 options at fullback, which is going to hamstring your season if you're not careful, because we need results and we need them quickly. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that front, but it's not great. Also, there's a story here, this is in Football Insider, that it was just almost like an I'm finally in one of the articles that I read this morning about the fact that Bayindir, the goalkeeper, Alti Bayindir, that him and Ten Hag didn't speak for the first 2 weeks he was here, which just seems a little bit odd. Apparently he's working with the goalkeeping coaches before he spoke to Ten Hag, but you think a manager would speak to a new signing. Now, the only reason I mention this is because it just feels like we're getting into this sort of phase where all these stories are coming out and a lot of them are geared towards sort of criticising or questioning the manager, his approach, the way he's doing things, and it worries me. I just don't see this having a happy ending. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. And I hope you saw the Northern Lights, by the way, last night. Anyone in Manchester or in Britain clocking? We had them in Eccles. It was a bit of a treat there to see the Northern Lights. Also, one final thing I want to mention as well. England lost last night, right? Now, I don't care about England that much. I care when Manchester United players are playing for him. And that's not me being a top red. It's just the way I feel. And it just was a bit of a relief to not see Manchester United players being blamed this morning for England losing to Greece. Because usually it'd be like, oh, it's Kobe Mainoo's fault, it's Marcus Rashford's fault, it's Harry Maguire's fault, it's Luke Shaw's fault. There was none of that this morning. And that makes a nice little change, doesn't it? So whatever happened with England, it was now to do with Manchester United, so you can bore off where you're blaming the Reds for that one. We're going to leave it there. I'm going to be back later on today. We're going to have the brew. I think it's going to be me, Steve and Joe on that one. So make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. I'm Jay Moyer outside a pretty sunny Old Trafford. Thanks for watching.